Let me break this last one up. All right. Thank you, sir. All right. Tina, do you have one? Yes. Okay, perfect. All right. Welcome, friends. In case you don't know me, I am your team leader, Jordan Sibley. I'm also a Keller Williams University instructor, which means that they ask me to travel and teach amazing KW content around the country sometimes and at different conferences that we have. So aside from being a KWU instructor, what qualifies me to teach this particular topic? Well, from the moment I was licensed, I was a full-time buyer specialist on mine and my husband's team. I knew coming in that I exclusively wanted to work with just buyers. And again, when you're on a team, you can do that. Most of us are solo agents, so we work with buyers and sellers. The same things you're going to learn here still apply, but the point being, I was doing 3 times and 4 times as many buyer consultations as the average agent because it's all that I did. So I'm recording this. It's going to go on YouTube on like an unlisted video. You will all get a link to it to watch it as many times as you want. The presentation I'm sharing with you was created on Canva. You are going to get a link to it so you can edit it and make it however you want. If you want to turn my slides purple, do it. But I want to set you up for every single possible way to be successful when working with buyers. Sound cool? The packet I'm giving you, do not expect to follow along with this while I'm teaching, because this is extra information that's just going to go into a little bit more detail. I really just want you to focus in on the dialogues that are happening as I'm going through each slide, okay? So this is not like a fill in the blank, let me see what page she's on kind of class. Make sense? All right, would somebody mind catching those doors for me just to keep the sound consistent? All right, friends, and then take out your cell phones for me. Make sure they are on silent or vibrate, whatever works best for you. Okay, so when I got licensed and my husband told me, I really want you to work with all these buyer leads. I don't enjoy working with buyers because buyers take up way too much time. Buyers are liars. They tell you they want one thing and they want the other. Well, right off the bat, and especially because he's my husband, I'm like, sounds like there's something wrong with you, not the buyers. And at the end of the day, that typically is the case. Because when we get ready to go on a listing appointment, okay, to hopefully have the honor of listing someone's house for sale, we do a lot of preparation. We're typically talking to the seller, asking them specific questions before we get to their house. We're probably doing a drive-by of the house. We're going in the MLS and seeing if it was listed before, looking at old pictures, doing a CMA, making sure we have our value proposition together. We have a packet to give them. That's why we get paid the big bucks, right? We're prepared. We're local market experts. Okay. But when I got licensed, when people were working with buyers, they were literally talking to people on the phone for 5 or 10 minutes and then meeting them at a house. That was it. And I'm sitting here thinking, well, one, I'm not a fan of getting murdered by somebody I don't know. That was my first motivation for being like, something's wrong with this process, okay? Because you should never meet a stranger at a house, by the way. Do we all know this? Yes or yes? Okay, cool. So I knew I've got to meet these people at the office first to even determine if we're a good fit to work together. Because if somebody gives you the heebie-jeebies at the office, you're probably going to decide maybe not to work with them, or at least bring a friend when you go to show a property. So that was the first thing. I just thought it wasn't safe to just jump up and show people houses. The second thing was, if we're doing all this prep work before meeting with a seller and deciding whether or not we actually want to work with the seller, why aren't we doing the same thing for buyers? That's nuts. Do they not pay us the same commission most of the time? Yeah. They are financially worth the same, so why wouldn't we put the same level of effort in consulting with and educating a buyer as we would a seller? Now, you're brand new and you don't know what you don't know. You're in the best position in this whole class, okay, because you don't have bad habits. I, for one, will tell you, I knew this NAR settlement was coming back from 2016 because there's many states around the country that have always operated this way. You had to have an exclusive rep agreement with your buyer client, and you negotiated your compensation with them directly. So that was the third reason I wanted to do this, is I said, I know the time is coming, whether it's next year or in 15 years, where I'm gonna have to negotiate my worth directly with my buyer. So I better start practicing now. Okay, make sense? So this is a judgment-free class, okay? I'm gonna say some things that maybe you're like, man, I have never done that with a buyer, and that's okay. There's no judgment exists here. I just want you to learn how to deliver better customer service to your buyers and how to set better professional boundaries for yourself by following this method. Now, what I'm teaching you today is not Jordan Sibley's method. I will be the first to tell you I'm not the most intelligent person in this room, but I am the most studious, and I'm extremely resourceful. So back in 2016, I marched into my team leader's office at the time, Wayne Setliff, out of the Slidell office. And I'm like, Wayne, John knows nothing about working with buyers. He stinks. John's my husband. I said, so there's gotta be a KW system for working with buyers. He's like, it is, it's right there on the shelf. I've got 2 binders of it. So I reach onto his shelf and I could tell nobody had ever opened this binder because it was stuck to the one next to it. So I pulled it out and it was called the Buyer Consultation for the Kokoska Group. Now, if you've been with KW for a while, you know the name Diana Kokoska. She's the original author of Bold. And she put together the buyer consultation process that her team used when she was in sales. And then when she developed Bold, it's the buyer consultation they taught in Bold. So I'm thinking, everybody's got access to this sucker. Why is nobody using it? I'm gonna be the one to master it because I may be a newbie agent, but I know how to study. I can memorize this. And then the rest of the stuff, I can get support from in my market center to learn how to do other things like write contracts, negotiate, all those things. But only you can make a good first impression, yes or yes? Yes. And if you want to make a good impression on somebody who is going to make the largest financial investment of their life with you, you better be prepared, okay? So let's jump into this class. A couple of things I want to chat to you about are some assumptions that I want you to make. We are assuming in this class today that you've already met a buyer. They've expressed some level of interest of buying a house in the next year, okay? So you may have been talking with this buyer over 10 phone calls, or maybe you just met them once at an open house, but your goal was to get them in the office for a consultation. Remember, just as much as they are interviewing you for the job of helping them buy their home, you're interviewing them. Just like you shouldn't take every listing that comes your way, like the unrealistic kind of crabby seller that wants to way overprice their house. You don't have to work with every buyer who comes your way. Now, it's rare. I think in my whole career, there were only 3 or 4 people I actually chose not to work with. But remember that if you go through this consultation with somebody and they have unrealistic expectations, or for whatever reason you're just not gelling together, you don't have to work with them. It sounds so common sense, but I can't tell you how many top producers come meet with me for our weekly coaching and they're complaining left and right about a client, and I'm like, fire your client. They sound like a terrible human being and they're making you lose sleep at night. Okay, so I am just giving you permission. As someone who's been in the trenches with you, you don't have to work with every buyer who comes your way. Now, we made that assumption. We set the consultation for them to come into the office. I could teach you a whole class on that whole process to get them in. But instead, I'll skip ahead and ask you, why should we bring buyers into our office for a formal consultation versus just going through it at the first house we show them or meeting them at Starbucks? Why do you think we should do it here?
Because it's a safer place, safer environment.
Mm-hmm.
And they can see you're more professional.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yes, yes. Why else?
You put it on the big screen.
Yeah.
You're at Starbucks, you're more than likely working off your computer screen, and that's not,
Yep.
not great.
What'd you say, Rob? I didn't hear you.
If you're at like Starbucks or something, you're more than likely looking at this screen versus that screen.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
I didn't hear anything.
Yep.
Show the network of support that we have here, that it's not just me.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like an actual business.
Yes, it's a professional setting. When I have to go get a filling, I don't meet the dentist at like the local library. We go to his office where he has his professional tools. So same thing here. And like you mentioned, you bring them into a conference room with a TV. You can pull up the presentation. Now, please make no mistake, if you're not a techie person, you do not have to have this on the screen whatsoever. I was a presenter in many past jobs that I've had, so I'm just comfortable with it. But you could take this presentation, print it out in PDF format, it can have the same effect. Okay? So if you're nervous, like, I'm not really a PowerPoint person, then don't use it. Just use the same content. Okay? So, also, if a buyer is pushing back about not wanting to come meet you in the office, what does that tell you?
Red flag.
Yeah, maybe they're not that motivated. Maybe they're just going to waste your time. Maybe they just wanted to use you to go unlock a bunch of houses and they don't really have an intention to buy anytime this year. Okay? So all the more reason you want to bring them to an in-office consultation. Now here's the cool thing about Keller Williams. We all sell property all over. Did you know that you can go to any Keller Williams office anywhere and use their conference room to meet with your clients? Just call the person at the front desk and say, hey, it's Rob from the Mandeville office. I wanted to do a buyer consult with a client at 11. Can I use your conference room? I've literally used every single conference room within like 30 miles of here before. So just know if you're working with a buyer in Slidell, absolutely go meet that buyer at the KW office in Slidell versus asking them to come here. Okay? All right. Last thing I'm going to cover before we jump into this is the circle of trust. Okay? And this is so important because everything I'm teaching you here today is also applicable to sellers. The circle of trust consists of 4 components. Can somebody read the red words at the very top of the circle?
Empathy.
Mm-hmm. Keep going. Next one.
Just the red words? Or that what
Just the red words. So empathy and then competency.
Transparency and dependability.
Perfect. Notice that it is not the linear line of trust. Trust is built and you have to continue building it for it to last. Our goal is to work with a client and keep them for life and to earn their referrals for life and to earn their referrals for life. Literally, one client that you help get into a house with a $1,600 a month lease could be worth millions of dollars in commissions if you do it right. Okay? So, the circle of trust, if you at any point don't display one of these 4 things or you're not consistent with it, that is where you have a rub with your client. So maybe you're the most competent agent in the world, but you're just so hard and dry with your facts, you don't really display any empathy. That's going to turn your client off. That's going to break that circle of trust. Maybe you're super empathetic, you're the most fun agent ever, they love working with you, you're real smart, but every time they call you, it takes you a whole day to get back to them. You're breaking their dependability piece of the circle. So just remember, we are in the relationship business, and we happen to sell real estate. I'm going to say that again. We are in the relationship business, and we happen to sell real estate. I always crack up when agents will be like, yeah, I love real estate, but I don't really like working with people. I mean, I love you, but you may want to find another job, okay? Because we deal with people a lot. And although working with sellers can absolutely be an emotional process, would you agree that for the most part, working with buyers, you get a little bit more into that emotional piece than with sellers? Would you agree? Yeah, okay. Not every buyer or seller, but for the most part. So this circle of trust, if somebody doesn't agree to work with you, or maybe you're rubbing and bumping heads a lot, ask yourself, have I done something to not fully complete this circle and then continue delivering upon it. All right, so remember, for those of you that came in a little later, this packet, we're not going through it page by page today. It's for you to reference after, pay more attention to what's on the screen. So when the buyer comes in to meet with me, and actually I'm jumping ahead real quick. Let me get to one thing first. Or not. Hold on. Boop. Boop. Okay, my boops worked. All right. We are within the confines of our own brokerage, so we will be talking about negotiating commissions today. That is allowed by law. But what we are masterminding around today, I am not telling you what commission to set. Does everybody understand that? You set the fee for your level of service. You determine what you're worth, okay? So I'm just letting you know we're going to talk about it, but myself in this class play no role in your decision on what you should charge. Cool? That's like the CYA part of this class. Okay, so the crazy thing about working with a buyer and a seller is the law of value. Tina, can you read the law of value for us?
Value is the heart of all businesses because all businesses are an exchange of value. You determine the value that you provide, and your clients determine how valuable it is to them.
Now, I said there was a crazy part to this. This is the crazy part. Tina, can you read this slide?
The challenge for all businesses is they must explain and
Demonstrate.
I couldn't get it out. The value they will give, so will that people agree their price before they experience it.
Yes. And sorry, I should ask you in the very back of the room if you could even see that. So yeah, in our line of work, we have to convince people of our value before they've even had a chance to experience it. Think about buying a car. You get to test drive the car. You can do your research, you can look at all the different colors and things and the interior and all the extra bells and whistles you can add on. You see the value and you experience it before you buy the car, yes? But with a realtor, we're literally making empty promises to people because they don't know if we're going to fulfill on these or not. So you have to get really, really clear on what value you provide to your buyers and sellers because they have to trust you before they've even had a chance to experience it. Now, because of the NAR settlement, you do know, I trust, you cannot show a client a house listed in the MLS without a buyer representation agreement signed. Do we all know that?
Yep.
Okay. So gone are the days of like showing them a couple houses and then asking them if they want to work with you. Can't do that anymore. So what buyer in their right mind would agree to pay me 3% of the sales price if the first time I'm ever meeting them is at the front door of that house and I go, please sign? I'd be like, whatever you are on, Jordan, I want some of it because you are crazy. All right? Another reason for the buyer consultation, you have to demonstrate your value and get them to agree to work with you. We talked about building and keeping the circle of trust. And then I want to specifically highlight 8 moments where trust is built or lost with buyers. Cindy, will you read these 8, please? Oh, I should ask first. Can you see these?
I can see
Okay,
them.
everybody. If I'm in the back of the room, I can't see, so, okay.
1, when you're making first contact. 2, when you're presenting value, reaching agreement, and setting expectations. 3, when you're qualifying them. 4, when you're searching for properties. 5, when you're showing properties. 6, when you're negotiating contracts. 7, when you're in the due diligence period. 8, when you're closing the transaction.
Yep. So this is according to the National Association of Realtors. When they poll, home buyers and sellers every year, this is when they said 8 moments where trust is either built or lost with a buyer. Now, I put a strange little circle there around the first 4 because those first 4 happened before, during, or immediately after the buyer consultation. So if you're meeting them at the house and that's the first time you're asking them to work with you, no wonder they don't trust you and want to sign your agreement. You skipped the whole first 4. So I know what I'm teaching you right now. You're like, Jordan, we get it. Do a consultation. But how many of you have consistently done a buyer consultation with every single buyer you've ever worked with? That's why I'm beating this horse to death, okay? Again, no judgment. It's just realizing what we did in the past and improving. All right, so the buyer comes into my office. I've got the conference room reserved, and in front of them is a folder, a pen, and a bottle of water. Do you need a folder? No. Do you need to have a bottle of water? No. Do you need a pen? Yes, give him a pen. We got some extra pens in the conference room, okay? But this was my system. And inside that folder, it started out being just a black folder. Then I bought some KW folders. And then one day when my revenue made sense, I spent the money to get a custom folder, okay? But inside of it is what's important. The NAR Home Buyers Info Sheet. I highly encourage you to go to that site and print it out. It's a 1-pager that describes the NAR settlement to a buyer. It's short and sweet. It's great. Just in case they have questions.
Jordan,
Yes, ma'am.
Get this PowerPoint?
Yep. An editable link to it. Now, this part won't be in it though. Like that, when I get to the actual consultation, that'll be there, but these couple slides won't be. So you want to print that out. The next thing you want to have, I don't know why it's 1 and 1, but I guess they're both super important. The agency disclosure, also referred to as the customer information form. Okay? I don't know what that is.
Is it on the-
It shouldn't be, because that should be under Jordan's iPad. Let's see. There we go. Okay. Stop trying to cast to my TV, Kayla. All right. So we've got the info sheet, we have the agency disclosure, and then your buyer representation agreement. That's the actual agreement that becomes a contract between you and the buyer where they agree to work with you and you with them. The extra things are bonus items, and you'll see why. I include a blank purchase agreement. Any buyer with any sort of brain cells can go to the LREC website and download a purchase agreement. They don't need you for that. So print it out and put it in their packet, because I'll show you why it becomes important. You're also going to want to include 10 business cards. I'll show you why later. And then if you have a printed version of your buyer packet, put that in there too. You don't need to have one. Don't fuss over it, okay? It's just for the clients that are very analytical, like your engineers, your accountants, whoever else is very detail-oriented. I'm having a brain fart. Doctors.
Did you say engineers?
Yes, law enforcement, engineers. Okay, all of our details people. I'm a details person. They're going to appreciate that you have a packet. Everybody else, probably never going to look through it, so don't spend too much time on it. But it's just a refresher for them to take home. Okay? Now, they come in. This is the slide they see on the screen. Again, when you get this, you can edit it. Like we did almost all of our business on the South Shore, so I've got French Quarter houses here in the picture. Maybe you change yours to the Mandeville Lakefront, whatever. You're going to have the ability to do that at the end of this. Cool? All right, so they come in, and now we're going to get to the part where I'm going to role play the actual buyer consultation. Now, something important I want to point out is a difference between a consultation and a presentation. It's a little bit, there's kind of a juxtaposition today because I'm teaching you about the consultation, but I'm presenting to you. Here's the difference. If I'm a presenter, okay, I am assuming that my class members are empty vessels that I am filling with knowledge. Your buyers are not empty vessels. They have their motivation, their wants, their needs floating around in their head, and they have some kind of idea of what you're about to talk about. So instead, we want to switch to a consultation. What's the difference in your head between a presentation and a consultation?
Gathering information.
Okay.
I feel like the buyer's more involved in the consultation.
Yes. What else?
You're showing them your value. You're not teaching them anything. You're trying to show them what you can bring to the table to connect that agreement
Yep.
with each other.
Write this down. It's extremely important, and it will drastically affect the outcome of this meeting with your buyer. A consultation is a two-way conversation where it's your job to ask questions. I'm gonna turn these fans on in here if nobody's opposed. It's just like a little stagnant in here. So a consultation is a two-way conversation, and it's your goal to ask, it's your duty and your goal to ask as many questions as possible. So again, it's a little weird. I'm teaching you about a consultation, but I will be presenting to you. So if I were sitting at the table with my buyer, it's gonna be a lot more conversational than how it's gonna feel today. Are we cool with that? Great. Okay, so let's jump into it. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pretend to put a hat on, and that means I'm wearing my agent hat. And then I'm gonna take it off and I'm gonna put on my teacher hat. We're gonna go through each slide like you would with your buyers, and then I'm gonna explain the why behind the slides, because everything on here is intentional. So although you can edit this, edit the look of it, but please don't edit the content till you've done it at least 10 times. At KW, we call it mastering it before you mess with it. Make sense? But you can change your pictures and colors and font, I don't care. All right, so buyer is in here with me, and I'm gonna say Mr. and Miss, I'm just gonna call them Smith. Mr. and Mrs. Smith, which is, by the way, Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie, isn't it? They were Mr. and Mrs. Smith in that movie? Okay. Yes, always wanted to work with Brad Pitt. Okay, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, it's so nice to have y'all in here today. I know you're both very busy. I appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to come meet with me. I've got a couple goals today, and the first goal is to get to know exactly what the two of you want in your next home. The other goal that I have is just to get to know you on a more personal level, because should we choose to work together, we're gonna be spending a lot of time together. Okay, and the third thing is to educate you on the purchase process so you feel comfortable and confident when it comes time to write an offer on a house. How does that sound? Great, awesome. So before we jump into this, I just wanted to ask you guys a few questions. Tell me a little bit about who's going to be making the move with you. I think you mentioned you guys have a son. Somebody just funsy role play with me.
Yeah, we've got 2 boys and a dog.
Okay, what kind of dog do you have?
Yellow lab.
Oh, very nice. Is he young pup or
Yeah, he's into everything.
old in the years or?
Full of energy.
Oh my goodness. So I am just gonna go ahead and assume right now we're gonna need a house with a yard, right?
Absolutely. With a fence.
With a fence, yes, absolutely. I know labs love to run and play and be active. Your 2 sons, what are they into? Do they have any extracurriculars they enjoy?
Yeah, we're getting them into fishing, and they're starting to play soccer. So, being boys,
Yep,
they like playing in the woods too.
I love it. I asked the man that has two girls at home. I love it. So I'm like, how are your 2 imaginary boys, Rob?
Right.
Awesome. So, I mean, if y'all had a dream destination to go take them fishing or like on a hunting experience somewhere, where would that be?
Probably, I don't know, Brazil maybe?
That's really cool. I was just expecting you to say like the Carolina mountains or something, but yeah.
I'm in Colorado this summer. So.
Okay, well, very nice. Very nice. I love it. Well, listen, I wanted to let you know, Rob Smith, that one of 3 things is going to happen today. And you and Mrs. Smith get to decide which of those 3 things happens. Does that sound fair enough?
Sure.
Okay. The first thing that could happen is you're going to love everything we talk about, and you're going to decide, hey, I'd really like to work with Jordan to buy our next house, and that would be great. The second thing that could happen is that after we get to know each other and go through this, you just decide that, maybe I'm not the right fit for you, and that's okay too. The third thing that could happen is that after getting to know you both, I might decide that I'm not the best person to help you guys with your purchase. Is it fair enough that one of those 3 things is going to happen, and you guys get to decide which one it is?
Sure.
Great. Well, let's jump into this, if I have your permission, to talk about buying your next home.
Let's go.
Great. Agent hat off, teacher hat on. The first technique I started with was called Ford, and it's in your packet, okay? Ford is spelled F-O-R-D, like Ford truck, and it stands for Family, Occupation, Recreation, and Dreams. It's an icebreaker, okay? If you already know a lot about this person, like maybe Rob and his wife they're your coworkers, you've known them for a long time, you can still use that icebreaker technique because the point of an icebreaker is to get them to relax. I asked them about their family. I went from F to R because he told me about the boys and I'm like, what do y'all like to do for fun? And then I went from R to D. I asked him, what will be y'all's dream vacation destination or hunting excursion? But you get what I'm saying. Ask at least 2 of those letters. Or maybe you talk about F the whole time. It's fine. But the point of that technique is to get them to relax and to build rapport. Now, the next thing I did is I gave them 3 outcomes that could happen. Why do you think I did that?
They feel more empowered when they make the choice.
Yes, they are in control. People like to be in control of their own decisions. So just remind them, you're in control, there's no pressure here. I can't tell you how many times I've sat across the table and after giving them their 3 outcomes and telling them it's their decision, I watch their posture, like visibly they relax. Okay, so that's an important part. Any questions on that first thing? Cool, agent hat back on. I'm gonna role play with some of you guys. Let me back up real quick. I promise I'm not gonna ask you anything scary. Just pretend to be a buyer. Meaning, if I ask you a question, you can either say you know what I'm talking about, or you can say I'm not really sure what that means. Just we're pretending, cool? Nobody needs to be nervous about anything. All right, so Mrs. Smith, I'd like to start by educating you about the current market in St. Tammany Parish. So have you heard anything from like friends, family, coworkers about what the market looks like? You have any, perceptions about it?
So I did hear that the interest rates are a little high.
Mm-hmm.
People are kind of waiting to see if they drop.
Yeah.
But I would like to know a little more about what you can educate me on as far as the interest rates, because that's what I'm nervous about.
Totally. I'm so glad you shared that with me because we are going to talk about that for sure on this next slide. First, I want to show you a little bit about how realtors determine if we're sitting in a buyer's market, a seller's market, or a balanced market. Have you heard the terms buyer's and seller's market before?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So what I'm showing you over here, and sorry I didn't update it to this year, but you'll still get the gist, is that a balanced market has anywhere from 5 to 7 months of inventory available. Inventory is simply houses for sale, okay? And this is a graph showing at any time how many houses were for sale. Now, if you see far above the line that there's lots of houses for sale, it typically tells us we're in a buyer's market. Back over here, we're looking at COVID and post-COVID. What type of market do you think we were in here? Seller's market. There just was hardly anything for sale and it was getting snatched up right away. So a balanced market is where there's a good amount of properties for sale and enough buyers to scoop them up. What we're seeing today as of July 2024 is that we're kind of approaching a balanced market here. There's a good bit of inventory for sale, but some of it is sitting. And the reason I share that with you is depending upon what kind of market we're in will depend upon what type of offer we make. Does that make sense? Great. And then the other part of this slide shows the average list price to sale price ratio. So Mrs. Smith, what it means to you is that if you've ever gone on a car lot, okay, and they post the price of the car right there on the windshield, right? Is it your goal to pay that price or are you hoping to pay below that price? Yes, absolutely. So the difference between what you paid for that car and what was pasted across the windshield is the list price to sale price ratio. Now, what we're seeing right now as of September 2024 is that the average buyer in St. Tammany Parish is paying 102% of the purchase price. So I'd rather turn you down now than disappoint you later if you think that we're in the type of market where you can just make a super lowball offer and get lucky. The data just doesn't support that. Any questions? Okay, great. So you mentioned interest rates were something important to you, as they should be, but they're only one part of the financial equation when it comes to your mortgage. So what I've got up here on this super colorful slide is the average mortgage rate in the United States since 1972. The very top dotted line shows you the historical average of interest rates. And all I have to say is thank goodness I wasn't buying my first house in the 80s when my parents did. But you see, the funny thing is people were still buying houses when the interest rate was almost 17%. Now, when we were in the COVID days, you saw extremely low interest rates. Do you know why?
Well, the market just completely crashed.
Mm-hmm.
And the world was changing and all kinds of things were happening.
Yeah.
And everybody just wanted to sell their house and all the buyers came out.
Yes, that was an extreme circumstance. Literally, like an act of God helped change the interest rates. A global pandemic happened. And people, including myself, have been praying interest rates would come down that low. But Mrs. Smith, I have to tell you, they're never going to come that low again unless we experience a time of war or pandemic. And we don't want either of those things to happen. So the good news is if the national average sits at 7.74%, I've been helping buyers get into homes the past month at 6 or upper high 5%. Do you have any other questions about the interest rates?
No, I'm just hoping I can get maybe closer to 5%.
Absolutely. We will definitely work hard with your lender to make sure that happens. Okay, agent hat off. What is the purpose of this slide? Sorry I didn't update it, but you get the gist.
Just to show them really how the market works.
Mm-hmm.
And the difference between a buyer's market and a seller's market.
Yep.
And to help them differentiate between the two. And if we have any wiggle room for negotiating for the buyer, because right now, for me and my buyers, we do have a lot of room.
Yeah.
Because
Oh yeah, it looks way different than
right, yeah, the house they're sitting.
Yep.
So
Yep.
it just gives them a visual.
And you're going to see that month supply of inventory, if I were to pull this right now, is probably off the screen because there's so much inventory out there and it's not getting scooped up. So it's important to set expectations with your clients. Because if I've got a client that's like, oh my gosh, we love this house, it was just listed for $400,000, I think we should start our offer at $350,000. Mrs. Smith, do you remember when we met for the consultation 2 weeks ago, we looked at what the market was doing. And I mentioned that list price to sale price ratio average was about 102%. So I'm a person of facts and data, and I've got to go up to bat for your offer. How am I going to explain that to the seller? Why should they lower the price $50,000? That's how you just knock a lowball offer out of the park. I don't even write them for clients. Because I'm like, this is bananas. There's no data to support this evidence. Now, sometimes there is data, and we know somebody just way overpriced their house. Different story, okay? So you're setting expectations that you can refer to later on if you need to. What's the purpose of this slide?
To not discourage buyers to buy right now because the interest rates are actually not bad.
No, not at
That's what
all.
shows them that, in the 80s, they were 16 and people were still buying.
Mm-hmm.
And all you need to do is refinance.
Absolutely. That's why, and one thing I forgot to mention, it's on the screen though, is you marry your house, but you date the rate. If the rate drops, refinance. And also, interest rates are only one part of the whole mortgage equation. You may be dealing with private mortgage insurance, PMI, that could bump up the monthly payment, all the things, okay? All right, any questions or y'all want to move on? Cool? All right, agent hat back on. All right, Cindy, you're Mrs. Smith now. Mrs. Smith, tell me what you know about financial pre-approval.
It tells me what I can actually afford, and it tells me my monthly payments.
Yes, 100%, A+. Yes, that is what it is. So financial pre-approval, again, gives you comfort and confidence when it comes time to write an offer because you know that it's not about affording the house, it's about being comfortable with what you can afford in the house that you're looking to buy. There are a lot of people out there that are pre-approved for far higher than they're comfortable paying on a monthly note. So again, my job is to get you connected with a local lender or another lender that you trust anywhere, and make sure that you have all of your financial questions answered before we even start looking at homes.
But I don't want it to ruin my credit, so can I wait on doing that?
Oh, that's such a good point. I'm glad you brought that up. Now, because you guys are looking to move in the next 3 months, I would highly recommend getting pre-approved now. Will it affect your credit score? Yes, it will. And they also know that you're getting your credit pulled to buy a house. So there's some perspective there. What I would not encourage is going to apply for a new auto loan or going to apply for a line of credit at a furniture store. That's bad things that are going to affect your credit when it comes time to buy a house. But once your credit is pulled, you've got 30 days to get it pulled as many times as you want by other lenders to shop your rate. If they weren't going to be buying a house for another 6 months, it could kind of go either way. Okay? If they're not going to buy a house for another year, yes, they should still get pre-approved, because getting pre-approved allows you time to correct any unforeseen hiccups. When's the last time you looked at your credit report in detail? I don't know about you, but I really only looked at it right before I bought my last house or my last car. So it gives you time to make small improvements that may boost your credit score and help your interest rate.
About how many points does it affect your credit? Does anyone know?
I actually don't. I would have leave that up to the lender to tell you.
Okay.
And then also getting pre-approved shows that you're a serious buyer. Your pre-approval is required before we view homes, because if you want to make an offer, I'm going to need to present that pre-approval with the offer. Any questions? Great. All right, instructor hat off. Why is this slide important?
Because you want to make sure the person is able to buy a home before you take them out to show homes.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to waste anybody's time. I mean,
Yep.
the people that own the house that you're showing,
Mm-hmm.
your buyers, your time,
Mm-hmm.
everybody involved, you're not wasting time.
Yep.
If they're not pre-approved, then
Yep.
You know, you don't want to be showing $400,000 houses if they only qualify for 2.
Mm-hmm. Is it technically required before you show them a house?
No,
No. But notice I said it was.
me too.
Well, a lot of listing agents will require.
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. But the point is, remember, I told you, part of the purpose of this consultation is to set your expectations. I don't show homes to anyone who's not pre-approved. Daniel, question.
So also with pre-approved with a lender, I have a thing like a cash thing. So a lot of times I'll say like, do you have proof of funds? And I'll say, oh yeah, I have $300,000 in the bank. I'm like, great. And then I used to just go take them out. But what happened to me a week ago was kind of interesting. The lady wanted to write an offer, and she had 200. She wanted to write off for 275. She had 250 in the bank, but then she had other money elsewhere. And she said, oh, it'll only take a day to get that money in. Well, then she found out it takes 2 weeks to get the money.
Yeah.
So then so like even if they say they have money in the bank, say, hey, like can you send a screenshot or whatever? Because they didn't. She's like, oh, it'll take a day to transfer. It'll be fine. But then if you ask for a letter and it doesn't have the correct amount, then the seller's agent not going to take it seriously.
Mm-hmm.
So even if they say they have proof of funds letter, just double check that too.
That already happened like a few months ago.
Really, to you?
And it was completely voided, the whole entire contract. So it was fun.
And how many of you have ever assumed that because somebody says they have a lot of money that they actually do? That happened to me like 6 years ago.
Never.
Well, he sent me the screenshot, exactly what you said,
Mhm.
except it didn't transfer, like, for another week. So I
Mm-hmm.
saw it. It just, the transfer, like, it was lesson learned on my part,
Yeah.
first of all. So,
But she said specifically, I have 250 and I have more money. And she goes, it'll only take a day to hit the account. I'm like, great, we'll go ahead and write the offer. And then by the time I write the offer, she calls me and goes, actually, it's going to be 2 weeks before it'll transfer.
Yeah.
Yep.
So like, even if they think they know, they don't know unless you press them.
So my snafu story was I knew of this man through a friend, and I knew that he was a professional stuntman, like a highly sought after stuntman, because he was specialized in getting lit on fire. What'd you do today? I got lit on fire and thrown off a building. Anyway, and he lived in this gorgeous house in Clipper Estates in Slidell. Those houses are very expensive. Well, he had gotten a divorce and he was looking to sell that house and buy a new one. And he's like, yep, finances are all good. I'm good to go. I made the assumption, okay, I've heard this guy's like a big deal. He gets paid lots of money to be lit on fire and not die. And he lives in a really nice house now. We're good. My sweet friend, my buyer, he couldn't afford to buy a $200,000 house because he wrote off everything on his taxes for like 8 years. Don't ever assume. Okay, we did end up helping him buy a house 4 years later.
Can I ask you a question though?
Yeah.
Like, how do you press without being like, I feel like with rich people, you don't want to press because you don't want to like lose the deal. But it's also like, it's like an awkward, moment to be like, I know you say you have it, but like, can you show it to, like, how would you go about it in a professional way? Like, hey, I know, like, okay, I've already sent you enough, you know I'm good, like, whatever, and you ask again, what would you say using the book?
Yes.
Conversations?
Yes. So, Rob.
You can lean on your past experience. Just tell them, say, hey, look, I just went through this. We found the perfect house. We were assuming that we could have the money in a day or two. But then come to find out it was going to take 2 weeks. Well, in the meantime, somebody swooped in and bought the house. So to avoid that, let's go ahead and get that in order and be prepared for when we do find you the right house.
That's good.
The other thing is to never use the word afford, okay? Say, oh, this is not about what you guys can afford. This is about just having proof of funds from your bank if you're paying cash, or the pre-approval from your lender so that we can act fast when we need to. And unfortunately, I've just seen it go awry so many times if I don't get that letter up front. So please trust it's in your best interest to make that happen. And if they keep pushing,
Then last question. To ask for proof of funds letter from the bank, what do y'all normally ask for? Like, hey, go to your bank and see if they'll write you a letter.
yeah, you literally say, call your banker, because if they have a lot of money, they have a banker, okay? And say, all I need is a 1-page letter confirming the funds in your account. And that's literally all it is. It's like a paper with the header of the bank, the banker's name. It gives the last 4 digits of their account. It's like 2 sentences long.
And then you change the amount depending on what your offer is.
Yes.
Later.
Good point. Yeah, if they've got $1 million in the bank, but they're only buying a $500,000 house.
That'll help negotiate.
I think doing a presentation like this kind of levels the playing field when you're dealing with somebody that might have $500,000 in the bank. This is going to show them the value that you're bringing. Help that playing field a little out.
And I don't know if this helps or not. I like to develop that relationship with their banker.
Yeah.
So that I can be in first
Yeah, call and
contact
have a
with them
conversation.
and the owner, like we all are working together as a team, rather than relying on my client to get to the banker, to get to the client, to get to me. So we're all kind of like, let's develop that relationship in the beginning.
And when you get that proof of funds or that pre-approval, what should you do?
Oh God, don't say it.
Call and verify.
Yes. Call and verify. That is your duty as their fiduciary.
That relationship, yeah.
Is, hey, Rob Lender, I saw that you sent me over a pre-approval for Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Thanks for getting that over so quick. I just wanted to introduce myself because hopefully we'll be working together soon. Who are Mr. and Mrs. Smith?
I wish I had this buyer consultation a week ago.
No way.
It just happened to me.
What?
So, all right, that's the importance. I want to take a break real quick and mention, have you noticed that every single slide I go to, I start with a question? And some people will be like, oh, well, I get why you should do this with a first-time homeowner, but what if it's somebody's like 3rd or 4th purchase? Then you do it again. That's why you start with a question, because you're finding out what they already know. If I ask, bless you, if I ask Mrs. Smith, tell me what you know about financial pre-approval, she'll be like, yeah, we're going to go with Brian Chamberlain with Movement again. He did such a great job for us on our last loan. We've already started talking to him. Yeah, I'm understanding, okay, they know this process, they've done it before, super. But if they're like, yeah, I don't really know much about financial pre-approval, then you talk them through it. But the worst thing you can do is assume they don't know anything, because then you could insult their intelligence. Remember, that's the difference between a presentation and a consultation. Start every slide with a question, or every page if you're not doing a presentation. All right, let's keep moving. This is not part of the presentation. This is just a thing for you guys as agents. One of my favorite apps is the Palm Agent One app. And it's an app to help you run estimates, big emphasis on the word estimates, of what somebody could be pre-approved for. If you're newer to real estate or if you don't feel comfortable manipulating numbers, please don't do it. But if you're more experienced and you like using mortgage calculators and monthly affordability calculators, this is a really great value add that will enhance the competency you show to them. Remember, that's part of the circle of trust. So if you want to get this app, go right here, palmagent.com/login. I'll give you a second to do that. You can only get this app through a title company. And I know Allegiance Title across the street, they have it, and I think maybe Fleur de Lis offers it too.
Is that not it?
Crescent.
On the app?
Let's see.
Is that it?
Yep, that's it. And there's a paid for version, but trust me, the free one's just fine. But if you want to talk numbers with your client, I start the conversation with, what are you guys comfortable paying monthly? Like all in, your monthly payment, just like you were renting an apartment. $2,500. Okay, super. Let's plug that in. That's telling me right now that we can look at houses in the $400,000 to $500,000 range. However, this is just an estimate, my friends. I want you to speak with your lender about this to confirm. So it's just a good tool, and then you can get super granular with sellers, and you can do net sheets on here. You can do all kinds of cool stuff. So that's just a little value add. So Palm Agent. And you can like text them snapshots of everything. You can plug in taxes, insurance. You can plug all that in if you want to. All right, so moving on. Hi, my friends in Hammond. I want to make sure you guys don't have any questions. I don't know if you're able to come off of mute, but I do want to check in with you.
I do have a question now.
Yes.
Where can we access the packet that you give to everyone in the classroom?
I will email it to you, and if you guys would be so kind, please write down my email address and email me, and I'll reply back with it. So it's just jordansibley@kw.com, JordanSibley. Great question, Drew. Who's next to you, Drew? Is that Lindsay? I can't see.
Yeah, it's Lindsay.
Hey, I'm very good at deciphering tiny faces on a screen. Okay. All right, guys, let's move forward. So, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, did you know there are 5 ways I'm going to help you search for your next home? No, I guess I never thought about that. Well, great. Here's the 5 ways. First, of course, I'm going to use the Realtor MLS. I'm actually going to try to stay here so I'm in more view of this iPad. Sorry. I'm going to use the Realtor MLS, which is, it's really the source of all data that goes out onto the internet, because any house listed with a realtor is going to go in the MLS. The second way I'm going to help you look for homes is through agent networking. I belong to one of the largest real estate brokerages in the metro area, and we're also the top brokerage in terms of units and volume sold, meaning when I know what you're looking for, if it doesn't exist on the market, I'm going to go ask a very large network of agents in my brokerage if they have something coming up. The third way I'm going to help you look is with for sale by owners. If you're driving around or walking the dog and you see a for sale by owners sign in front of a house that looks promising, I want you to take a picture of the sign and text it to me. Allow me to call the seller on your behalf to find out, why are they selling? Are there any defects they want to disclose about the property or any improvements? Why did they choose the list price that they chose? And how motivated are they to sell? Allow me to be your fiduciary and speak to that seller and get as much information as possible. The fourth way I'm going to help you is through open houses. Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, in that packet you have in front of you, the imaginary packet, there are 10 of my business cards. These are what I consider open house guest passes. So if you want to visit a couple open houses over the weekend, bring these guest passes with you and hand one to the agent hosting the house open so that if they have any questions, the agent will bug me and not you. How does that sound?
Open house guest passes is brilliant.
And the fifth way I can help you is through new construction. If you're considering, a new build neighborhood, allow me to accompany you to the sales office so that we can look at floor plans and lots together, because having the experience that I have, I know the right questions to ask to make sure you are getting the best deal with the builder. How does that sound? Great. Realtor hat off, teacher hat on. What's the purpose of this slide?
So that they don't go to a for sale by owner and cut you out. Or new construction.
Or
open house.
yes. Your job is to prevent problems from happening before they happen. Who's ever been cheated on by a FSBO before? Once, and then this went into my presentation. Who's ever gotten, a shady person doing an open house and stole a client from them? Okay? This is my favorite, is back when Lakeshore Villages was being built in Slidell, I had helped this client look at homes for like over a 2-month period, okay? Then they're like, well, Jordan, we were just driving around on Saturday, and before we knew it, we ended up at Lakeshore Villages, and it just happened so fast, but we were already under contract on a house. I'm like, it happened so fast. You never once thought to call me about that. Well, we didn't want to bother you. You didn't want to bother me about a question about a house that I'm trying to help you buy? I didn't say that, but all that's in my head along with a couple curse words. So you bring up all the ways you're going to help them so they don't feel the need to go behind your back. Please trust that most human beings are really great people and they're not going behind your back to be malicious.
Don't know.
They don't know better. Okay?
I did it to my realtor years ago.
Cindy, how dare you?
I didn't know. I was like, I found the house
Yeah.
on the MLS,
Yeah.
on Zillow, and so I went to the listing agent.
Uh-huh.
And you didn't help me do anything.
Right.
But then that was in my head.
But
Is the
also,
buyer
oh,
rep
go for it.
agreement, would that now cover?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Most
you
new
just,
construction companies are gonna, if you've got that rep agreement, and maybe you emailed them the property.
Mm-hmm.
I had that happen to me with DSLD.
Mm-hmm.
I had an appointment set for like a Sunday, and on Saturday, she's like, I'm gonna go drive the neighborhood. I'm
Mhm.
like, perfect, go see if you even like that area. Next thing you know, hey, we can't make the appointment. I'm like, oh, matter of fact, like, she was trying to ghost me.
Mm-hmm.
So I called the DSLD rep, and lo and behold, she had put her under contract.
Mm-hmm.
But they took it a step further. They had that buyer, who had only met one time,
Mm-hmm.
they had her write a letter and send it to my broker stating that she no longer wished to work with me.
Right.
I'm like, time out. Talking to my broker, I said, time out. I've never had anybody do that.
Mm-hmm.
Where did that idea come from? My
Yeah.
buyer didn't just dream that up.
Yeah.
The DSLD rep did.
Yeah.
So my broker recognized that, and she's like, yeah, y'all are gonna pay.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
they did. But
Yeah.
I didn't do anything.
Yeah.
Like, meaning, from that point forward, all I did was collect a check. So,
Yep. And, I'll go back to this, Cindy. Did your agent at the time do any of this with you?
Nothing.
Nothing. So did you feel loyalty to this person?
No.
No. Bye, Felicia.
She was just so nice. I thought she just wanted to show us when she had a day off. And
Yes.
show us around a couple houses, and
Yeah,
if we happen to use her, we used her.
And that's why I think the buyer's agreements are genius. And
they are.
It should have happened a long time ago.
Amen, sister. I'm with you.
I had an experience with a friend's boyfriend that I knew,
Mm-hmm.
and I thought, oh, he'd be great, so I looked at houses with him, several houses, this was a few years back, several houses with him, and then after we already set up all these, showings, like in the middle, he would say, well, I'm gonna go play pickleball, just, go ahead and cancel those. I wanted to kill him. So anyway, in the meantime, he tells me, well, I'm gonna wait a little while, just,
Mm-hmm.
then about a month or so goes by, and he found another house, probably like you were saying, got another agent to show
Yep.
it to him, and he got it.
Yep.
And he wants to know if I'm upset. Ask me yourself. You come and ask me yourself, and I'll tell you. No, this was before that came about.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so now I'm kinda like, I didn't like the buyer's agreements at first,
Mhm.
now I'm kinda.
Now I'm thinking we go back and see how much I paid for that house and go send her a check from 5 years ago.
No. So the moral of the story is this. Remember how I told you, my husband and many other agents who didn't like work with buyers, like buyers are liars and they'll string you along. Yes, that can happen, though when you follow this method, it's an anomaly. They are very loyal and they're educated and confident in working with you. So just know that.
And then back in the day, we thought as a consumer that the seller, like we weren't paying commissions to the buyer agent.
Yeah, you didn't realize they had already.
Realize how all that worked, really.
Yeah.
We had no idea how anybody got paid.
All right, so Mr. and Mrs. Smith, next we're going to talk about shopping for your home. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is we're going to determine together where you can wiggle. Do a little shimmy if you want. Okay? And by wiggle, I mean every buyer, no matter what their budget is, they have to contend with at least one of three things: price, location, and amenities, meaning the extra things inside or outside the house. Even if you have $1 million to spend, sometimes it's difficult to find the perfectly priced home in the exact location you want it with every single amenity that you want in there. We're going to have to wiggle a little bit, so we're about to do an exercise where we figure out just where you're willing to wiggle. Also, my average buyer looks at 3 to 5 homes before making an offer and finding the one. If we've seen 5 homes and you're not prepared to make an offer, it must have meant that I wasn't listening today to exactly what you're about to tell me you want. So in that case, we're going to come back to the office and go back to the drawing board through this exercise again. So get ready. We're going to do an in-depth analysis. I'm going to help you self-discover your list of priorities in your next home. Are you ready? It's time to play a game. I'm goofy in my buyer consultations. And they're like, yes, go. Okay. So purpose of this slide is, again, we're setting expectations. How many houses does Jordan show?
3 to 5.
Yep, don't ask me to see number 6. We're going back to the office first.
I like that.
I love that.
I don't care if you're Beyonce and you have a $500 million budget. There are not more than 5 homes that fit exactly what you're looking for. There's not. So this next exercise should take you easily a half an hour. Now, explaining it's not going to take half an hour. But when you go through it, do not rush this next part. It's the most important thing you are ever going to do as a buyer agent. Are you ready? It's a very underwhelming slide. This is it. Mr. and Mrs. Smith, turn to the back of your packet, rip that page off. There's one for each of you, your imaginary packets. And here's what that sheet looks like. That's at the top of the page, and then there's just a line going down the middle. It's not fancy at all. There's not even numbers. It's just blank. All right, so we are going to play a game, Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Do you remember the old school newlywed game where they would ask the wife questions and the husband would have to wear noise protectors over his ears so he didn't hear anything, and then it was his turn to talk and she had to do the same thing? That's what we're going to do. I need you to hold up your right hand. Everyone, hold up your right hand. Pretend you're the buyer. And I need you to say this with me. I promise not to talk while they're talking. Great job. If you only have one client, it's easy. But doing the husband and wife thing is a technique, or the mother, son, whoever is there at the consultation. So, Mrs. Buyer, ladies go first. What we're going to talk about first is your must-haves. And a must-have means you will not even consider driving by the house. You don't even want to click on the pictures online unless it has these things. Mr. Buyer, or Miss, you're not a miss. Mr. Buyer, tell me what your first must-have is.
A spacious outdoor porch, I guess, is that?
Ooh, I love it. Tell me more. What about this spacious porch? Why is it important to you?
Outdoor kitchen would be nice also.
Okay. Mr. Buyer, do you like to entertain?
Yes.
Okay. Or do you just like to cook for the family and just enjoy being outside?
Both, a little bit of both.
Okay. Paint me a picture of the perfect spacious porch and outdoor kitchen.
Do you provide brushes and a canvas for this? One?
I do.
Oh, visually, got it.
I give them a paintbrush and canvas and go,
Paint me
pretty,
a picture."
happy little trees. So give me your ideal image of what that looks like. Tell me. Does the porch have a covering over it with fans, or is it just
Yeah,
grassy area?
we can do that. Cover.
Okay, so it's got to be covered. All right.
Go crazy.
Okay. And you
Nice, fireplace.
okay. All right. And is the outdoor kitchen right there underneath the back patio, or could it be, in a separate area?
Right underneath on the left, like, side. I'll paint it out.
Good. Okay. So it's right underneath, it's covered, because hey, nobody wants to be grilling steaks while they're getting poured on, right? Okay.
By the way, his budget's $150,000.
We'll get there. No. Okay. So let me ask you this question. Let's say we find the perfect house. It has everything else on your must-have list and then a whole bunch of stuff on your wants list. But the porch is a little smaller and there's room for an outdoor kitchen, but it doesn't currently exist. Would that be a deal breaker?
Sure, it's not, is that a perfect, like,
No, this is you. There's no right or wrong answer. I'm asking if you're a pretend buyer. Would it break the deal if we found you a house that had everything you ever wanted, it just didn't have this ideal setup? Would you still be interested in buying it?
yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. So what we're going to do, Mr. Buyer, is we're actually going to move this very important feature over to the wants side. Would that be okay?
Okay.
Do you see the purpose of that exercise? Okay, now he may have said, no, I've wanted this my whole life. We were almost going to build it at our last house. It's got to have an outdoor kitchen. Okay, then it's a must-have. Okay?
Can I say one thing?
Yeah.
I love what you did there because it's kind of fun to dream a little bit, like and get excited because the home buying process is so stressful and sometimes it's like laborious, like you have to turn in all these documents and everything. It's kind of fun to like dream for a minute, be like, I was thinking like, let's see what I want. Like, I think that is a great exercise to do that because you let them have a little bit of fun. You have to bring the pain, bring it back around, and like you can't have the Lamborghini and the back porch with the.
I love the deep diving deeper too, just because you can see exactly what they want, and they talk more rather than just saying want check,
Right.
and then you have all these
Tell
wants
me
and you
why.
can never find that house.
Yeah, and then you go and try and find that
And
house,
it
and
doesn't
they're like,
exist.
oh, well, it doesn't have the fireplace, and I'm like, well, I
Right.
thought that wasn't a big deal.
Right, but
You
just
know,
diving deeper,
that's
you
good.
can realize that, okay,
Mm.
it's really not a want for you. I mean, a must-have.
All right, so,
I think sometimes I just go too quick through it, like, okay, sure.
oh, we all do. That's why it takes practice. So here's what I put. You are actually a perfect example of a dude that's like, I don't know, I don't care, just needs to be here. But I made him get more descriptive. Now here's the way you do that. Tell me more. What's important to you about having a covered porch? Paint me a picture of your perfect backyard. How will having this amazing patio setup enhance your quality of life? It's called the 3 deep question technique. And there it goes into detail in your packet. You can see more examples later. Let's just do one more for the must-haves. Mrs. Buyer, what is your next must-have?
Let's see. I want 2 walk-in closets in the primary suite. So
Of course you would say that.
Okay,
that is non-negotiable for me.
okay,
I want a soaking tub
okay,
in my bathroom as well.
okay.
I really want it to be like black, but it's okay. I won't be that
Jordan,
way.
you asked the wrong person.
Now, inevitably at this point, Mr. Smith is like, you don't need all that. And that's when you take your pen and you throw it at him and you said, you don't get to talk yet, Mr. Mrs. Smith is dreaming here.
Well, I don't know if you know, we're in the architect phase for our next house that we're building. that is literally my husband. He's like, please turn her off, please.
I just looked at your fabulous wardrobe and was like,
Yes.
yes, this queen needs 2 closets.
Wait, I want to see what else do you want? I want to hear this. I want crystal faucets.
I did tell my husband I wanted the floors to be heated.
Okay.
So that's kind of non-negotiable. And one more thing that's non-negotiable, but I'm building right now, and I know no Louisiana houses have this, is infrared sauna, because I currently have one.
A what?
Infrared sauna.
In
I have one in through my closet.
Like the light-based therapy saunas.
Yes.
Okay. So,
Who are you and
Who
how
are
high
you and why am I not friends with you?
I don't know. My friends come and sit in my sauna. I'm like, you get the corner right here where nobody sits.
so for the same thing, and again, if the other person, whether it's the mom is jumping in on what this person's saying or the spouse, this is where we are unlicensed marriage counselors. Did you know that was part of your job?
Yes.
Now, I know we're giggling if I say the husband jumps in, but I want you to picture it this way. Is one of the spouses typically more forward and in charge of the conversation? Yes. So when you get to the other person whose opinion is not always heard, you are seriously building trust by giving that person a voice, because maybe it's one of the only times they've ever gotten to have a voice. Sorry to get deep on you, but that's the truth.
True, because my husband does get offended. He's like, why are they looking at you in the whole conversation?
Yeah.
And he gets mad.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I'm the only one talking.
And then you go to the other spouse's side and you ask them the same thing. So I'm gonna go through these in a second, but I'm gonna do the must-haves for Mrs. Smith, then the must-haves for Mr. Smith. Then I'm going to do the wants for Mrs. Smith and the wants for Mr. Smith. Now, if you already know they've got a relatively tight budget, like let's say $300,000 or below, and they're buying in St. Tammany, you can preface this discussion with, tell me your 2 must-haves. Tell me your 3 wants. Because yeah, otherwise you're like, you got champagne taste on a beer budget, lady, because this ain't gonna happen. All right, so you can control the conversation a bit that way. So I'm gonna do just one more time, going 3 layers deep. Mrs. Smith, tell me what's important to you about 2 walk-in closets.
I was going to be funny about that one, but I will save that comment. What's important to me is that I have plenty of space for my clothes and my shoes.
Okay, absolutely.
And drawers. I need a lot of drawers too. For
Okay.
my clothes.
Okay.
So lots of space.
So are both of these closets for you, or are they to share with
One
Mr.
for my
Smith?
husband.
Okay.
His doesn't matter.
Okay.
I want to see his stuff.
So if one of these walk-in closets is a little smaller than the other, would that suffice?
It would be fine. However, my husband's safe needs to fit in the closet.
Okay, very important. Okay. We've got a safe that needs to fit. Let me ask you a question about the safe. If the safe could go into a closet in another area, let's say in the office, would that be
That's not going to work.
not going to work?
It has to be in the closet.
Beautiful. Thank you. Now, do you care if these closets are built out with all the bells and whistles, or are you willing to do that if the space is there?
I'm willing to do it.
Okay. So to make sure I'm understanding correctly, we want 2 walk-in closets because it represents space for you and space for your husband. It also means that we can have our safe inside the closet in our bedroom, which I'm sure is a safety thing. And that you're willing to work inside the closet with all of the additional features. Fantastic. So I went into more detail and then I reaffirmed what she said. Very important to do that. Now, okay, I told you we do Mrs. Smith, Mr. Smith, then we do the wants. You go through the same process. Do not rush this. And you see me writing on the board. I am writing. I have a copy of that must-haves and wants paper, and I'm writing all of these things. So, if Mrs. Smith sends me some houses she wants to go look at on Saturday, and one of them has a tiny master closet, I'm going to call her. Hey, Mrs. Smith, thanks for sending over those houses that we were going to take a look at. Listen, 2 of the 3 houses you wanted to see kind of had this little bitty master closet. Tell me why your 2 walk-in closets are no longer important to you.
Because I need big ones for all the space that I need, so that's not gonna work.
Precisely. So I think we should just save each of our times and skip these. What do you think?
Yes, thank you for looking into that.
Absolutely. You have to help them prioritize houses they want to look at. But do you see how I did that? I said, why is this no longer important? Or the people that are like, I have to have 4 bedrooms. Oh, but show us this cute little Lakeview cottage with 2. What? You getting rid of one of your kids? Like what? You told me you had to have 4 bedrooms. So this is a way to help you shrink down their list. Okay? All right, do we all understand how important this part of the process is? Great, it's gonna take a lot of time and it's worth it.
Where do you ultimately put this list, practically?
It comes with you on every single showing.
Oh.
Every single showing. It's your job to be a professional decision facilitator. And if you don't have an exact list of what they were looking for, it's hard to do that. That's where you end up showing 27 houses. Okay?
And do you question them if they pick a house that doesn't meet all of the requirements, or how do you?
If it meets all the must-haves, no, we'll still see it if it doesn't meet the wants. So.
Were you asking, does it meet the must-haves?
Yeah, if it doesn't meet the must-haves, there's a very low chance I'm actually going to show it to them, unless they have a very compelling reason why. And I'll say, guys, it's not that I'm trying to limit you on the houses you see. I just care a lot about you, and we spent a lot of time talking about what you actually wanted, so I just want to keep us focused.
Do you ask them to drive by it? Is that like a way to eliminate? They're like, I drove by it and I love it. I don't really want to see it.
It depends. If the must-have is inside the house, that's not going to help if they drive by. Yeah, so it just depends. All right, so Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, I wanted to let you know that I do a lot of research to keep you confident before we even write an offer. So although you'll have a pre-approval before we see homes, I'm going to ensure you connect with your lender before we write an offer to rework a preliminary loan estimate, because I don't like surprises in my finances, and I bet you're the same as me. So I want you to be comfortable with the monthly payment before we even make an offer. How does that sound?
Great idea.
The next thing I'm going to do, and I kind of do it a little bit before the first one, is I'm going to help to the best of my ability find out your estimated out-of-pocket costs. What's the deposit amount we're going to write into the offer? How much are inspections going to cost? And if at all humanly possible, I'm going to get you an insurance quote before we write an offer. Okay? Same thing, I'm going to make sure you know how much the appraisal costs, home warranty, closing costs, all the things. So unless it's a tight deadline to get an offer in, we're going to spend some time doing preliminary work. Would that be okay with you? And then the last thing I'm going to do is a comparative market analysis. We call it a CMA, and that's where we determine the estimated value, the estimated market value of the home to ensure you're making an informed decision. Because I don't want you to overpay for something if there's not data to support it. How does that sound? Do you see how many times y'all are shaking your heads? Okay? That's really part of like neuro-linguistic programming. You're getting them to say yes so many times in this presentation that when you say the fee I charge for my services is 3%, they're still doing this. It's science, okay?
Brilliant.
All right, so inside your imaginary folder, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, is a blank purchase agreement for the state of Louisiana. I want you to be comfortable and confident with the language in this agreement before it comes time to fill in the blanks. We can either go over it now together, or you can promise me you're going to take it home, look over it, and call me with any questions. Which would you prefer? They always say they'll take it home. But if you've got the engineer or the doctor or the attorney, that's what I was trying to say. I'm like, it's another A word, attorney. Be prepared. You may need to go through it with them. Yeah, so if you're a new agent, make sure you understand that contract, okay? Next, we're going to take a bird's eye view at the contract to close process. For the sake of our class today, I'm just going to hit on 2 bullet points, and then you'll see the method for the rest. So first, when we make an offer, we're going to need to fill in the amount of a good faith deposit. I typically recommend 1% of the total offer price, or higher if it's a cash offer. Just like putting a security deposit down on a place that you're going to rent, it shows that you're serious, and although there are lots of ways we can get that money back if we cancel the contract, there are ways that the seller could keep it if we default, and we'll discuss those later. The next thing that we'll do once you're under contract is schedule your home inspection. In your packet, I have a list of 4 home inspectors that my clients have given good reviews for, and they do this for a living. And the purpose of the home inspection is to take a look at major items only. The things that we can't see with our naked eye. We don't know what the plumbing looks like under the house. We didn't get a chance to climb on the roof. We didn't really do an inspection of the AC system. That's what we want the home inspector to focus on. But please know, even in a brand new construction home, a home inspector will find a list of 75 things that could be improved. We're just going to focus on the major ones that are either a big financial risk or are a safety hazard. How does that sound? Great. Okay. Then the next one, you could say, tell me what you know about the appraisal, blah, blah, blah. You go through that. Okay? So again, it's just a bird's eye view of what's going to happen next. Mr. and Mrs. Smith, I've told you that it's my job to be your decision facilitator. And I want you to think of me as a co-pilot in the plane. And you're a new pilot, okay? So you're relying a lot on my experience. Mr. and Mrs. Smith, can you visibly see turbulence with your naked eye? No, you can't. It's imaginary. You have to rely on the co-pilot's knowledge and experience and ability to read the instruments to determine if there's turbulence, and their ability to help you navigate around it. That's my job. And there are 88 types of turbulence that I'm going to help you avoid in this purchase process. How does that sound?
Sounds like a lot.
Thank goodness for you.
Thank God. They're not even supposed to be able to read this screen, by the way, but yes, these are all actual things. Okay?
That's great.
Here's the important part about that. I didn't say 88 types of potholes, okay? Because you can see a pothole. You can't see turbulence. The pilot's not like, well, I mean, yes, they could see a storm in front of them, but like you're not just like, oh, that air looks like turbulence. No, they have to rely on their tech to help them. Oh, and I've got a pilot in the room. Drew, can you see turbulence with your naked eye? We actually have a professional pilot in the room. Can you come off of mute?
I will point out the flaws in your analogy.
Thank you. Oh. Let me keep with my analogy, Drew. Okay.
Great.
First and foremost, ask your client if they're an actual pilot. The end. I love it. Or use an analogy of your choice, but it should basically be about imaginary stuff. Because is it not right that our job is to help people avoid problems they don't even know exist? Yes. Okay?
I love the visual.
Maybe you have like a little plane that flies across the stream and goes, no, I don't know. Okay.
Too soon.
Oh, God, yeah, sorry, too soon. Forgive me. Okay, let's go on to closing costs. Mr. and Mrs. Smith, tell me what you know about closing costs. Somebody throw out an answer.
Nothing.
Perfect. I'm so glad you mentioned that because closing costs, there's a misconception that closing costs are the same thing as a down payment. And even though the down payment is paid at closing, it is not technically closing costs. Closing costs are all the fees for the services and expenses required to actually finalize your purchase. The largest amount of the closing costs are going to be lender fees because the lender has to get paid for servicing your loan. Next would be title fees. Actually, I apologize. I should not have said the largest is lender fees. First is lender fees. Next is title fees for the title company to do all of these really important tasks for us. The largest amount is typically your escrows and prepaids. The bank wants to ensure that the house is fully insured before you actually move in. You are also going to need to pay a portion of the property tax, and you may or may not be required by your lender to purchase flood insurance. Even if you're not required, we highly encourage you to do so, because if you live in the state of Louisiana, you live in a flood zone. There are just better flood zones than others. Please don't ever tell someone they're not in a flood zone. Ever. Unless they live in Montana. Okay? And then the last part of your closing costs are the buyer agent's fee, my compensation, which I'll go into next. So in order for us to get started, we'll first need to solidify how I'm actually compensated for my services. Please know, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, that my compensation is not set by law and never has been. The fee that I charge for my fiduciary services is 3% of the sales price of the home you purchase. Now, who pays me? Well, ultimately you, Mr. and Mrs. Smith. You're my client. You're responsible for paying my fee at closing. Now, there is a high likelihood that some or even all of my fee may be paid by another party, whether it's the seller or the selling agent's broker. And we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Your options for compensation, like I mentioned, because there's different ways that you may not have to pay my compensation directly. If the seller or seller's broker offers to pay, let's say, 2% of my fee, that would just mean that you, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, are only responsible for 1%. The seller may also offer you a percentage or a dollar amount towards your closing costs. You can choose what to do with that money. Whether it goes towards your prepaids or it goes towards my compensation, the choice is yours. The third option is you may actually have the option to finance my fee into the loan, but that's a question that we'll have to reserve for your lender. Any questions?
I don't want to pay 3%.
I'm so glad you brought that up, Mr. Smith. Tell me more.
I think that's too much money.
Okay, tell me more.
Jordan, your face right now is scary.
With the new NAR
Oh.
settlement, that commissions will be going down.
Okay.
That's what the news said.
Sure. Mr. Smith, I really appreciate that. How often have you heard something on the news where it's not the full truth?
On the internet.
Okay? And I really appreciate you bringing that up, okay? So just like if you were to purchase a car, you could buy a used Toyota Tercel, and it could get you to work just fine. You could also purchase a Mercedes-Benz, and it's still going to get you to work fine. But the difference is the experience and the value between the two. And only you, the buyer, are going to determine how much that value is worth. Now, I've mentioned how my knowledge, my experience, my professionalism is going to help you avoid all that turbulence, and that is why I charge 3% for my services. That being said, are you still uncomfortable with the 3% fee?
I'll think about it.
Okay, perfect. I often find when people need to think about it, they still have unanswered questions. So, tell me more.
I can't afford it.
Okay, I'm glad you brought that up. So if I were to help you find the right house, and we were able to finance my compensation into your loan, or get the seller to pay the majority of it, would you be amenable to signing this agreement?
I would sign it.
So the point is, dig deeper. At the end of the day, if he does not want to pay me 3%, that's okay. I don't have to work with him. Or I could agree to lower it or anything. But the beauty is you don't have to work with anyone. But typically, if you are confident enough to dig deeper into that objection, you'll get to the real root. And maybe his real root says, well, the last time we bought a house 15 years ago, we didn't have to pay our agent. Aha, does he even know about the NAR settlement? He mentioned he did, but you could use it this way. I'm so glad you brought that up, Mr. Buyer. When you purchased your house, if you go back to your closing disclosure from 15 years ago, the compensation to your agent was likely paid by the listing agent's broker. It was an unspoken cooperation that we had to get the deal done. It's still the same way. It's just we like to leave it in the seller's hands to negotiate with their agent and the buyer to negotiate with their agent. But at the end of the day, The compensation has always been financed into the sale, and it's reflected in the purchase price.
Can I give you one more?
Yes.
objection? I drive around the neighborhoods and I always see this sign that says 1% list.
Mm-hmm.
Why can't you just do it for 1%?
Oh, I appreciate that. There are a lot of agents in my office super hungry for business that they just pray it would fall into their lap, and they'll do it for 1%. I'm happy to refer you to one of them. I just ask you to question, have you ever bought something on a super deep discount and then regretted buying it when you got it home? There's typically a reason it was on clearance.
Jordan, you're so good.
I'm not being a jerk. This is Jordan Sibley talking. I am confident in what I do as a buyer agent.
You're good.
And it's okay if you disagree with my method. That's the beauty of being an entrepreneur. If you want to charge for 1%, beautiful. I'm happy for you.
You're gonna get a much higher level of service at 3% than you are at 1%.
Yeah.
I'm gonna work much harder for 3% than I am for 1%.
Amen.
What is the terminology? I heard someone say one time was like, if you are already starting out at 1%, that's a bad negotiator, and I'm a good negotiator, and you should pay my 3% because would you want that bad negotiator to negotiate for your home? It was something like that. Have you heard that one before?
Yes. Let me go. I'm going to get on that. Let me go to Cindy, then I'll go to Rita.
So, what happens, I'm talking as like the imaginary buyer, what happens if we get into a pickle and they don't offer any compensation and I really can't afford, I don't have the cash to pay you the 3%, would you go lower at that time?
So how about this, Mrs. Buyer? If we find out in the negotiation that the seller is completely unwilling to pay any of my compensation whatsoever, but this house is truly the one for you, we can decide at that time if I'll either lower my compensation or we can tear up this agreement and we can shake hands and part ways as friends and you can represent yourself. Would that be fair?
Yes, like that.
You may not be willing to do that, or you may be willing to do that. That is for you to decide. Again, it's the beauty of being an entrepreneur. Okay? You mentioned that other thing. So the objection handler you're referring to is, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, I can appreciate you want me to negotiate down my commission, which really means I'm negotiating down my worth. If I'm so easy to give up my money, do you think I'd be a good negotiator with your money when it comes time to make an offer? No, and that's because I know my worth, I'm confident in it, and when I go up to bat for your offer, we're going to stand firm and I'm going to use my knowledge and experience to make sure you get the best price possible. Do you have any other questions? It is.
Would you ever say something at like 1%, I'm just gonna do X? And not really, just to kind of show them the power of everything else that you do?
There is a new model, relatively new. It's called offering a menu of services to a client. I'm not bad-mouthing 1% lists. I'm just saying, if I'm correct, they do kind of have a menu of services as to what you pay.
Yes,
You've heard that?
I have.
No?
I have their sheet.
I've heard that from not 1% lists, but I've heard it from other agents that go, that's how they present.
Okay.
They're like, hey, this is what you get for 1%, 2%, 2.5%, and 3. It's like a menu. Like
Yeah.
I
at
did a listing
McDonald's.
recently where it was a higher priced listing,
Mhm.
and it was one of Grant's, his personal.
Sure.
But she doesn't take a lot, but he took this one, but in the agent notes, it clearly stated that this was a, what are they called, non-agent representative
Mm-hmm.
deal, like, hey,
Yeah.
here's the seller's number, contact him and do the.
Yeah, they
deal
just put it in
yourself.
the MLS. They probably paid him $1,000 to do it. So the menu of services option is something that is a great way to do business. It's not how I would want to do business, but that doesn't mean it's wrong. That just means Jordan's not doing that. But I can see how it works for some people, for sure. So I know we're all throwing out objection handlers. I can assure you, in all the years I've done this, there's no question when we get to this slide. It is extremely, extremely rare. Okay? All right, so Mr. and Mrs. Smith, to wrap up, I'm going to give you the agency disclosure. It's required by the Louisiana Real Estate Commission. It simply states my duties to you as a realtor. It does not commit you to working with me. It just makes sure that you understand the laws of agency. Pass it to them to sign. Next, this is my buyer representation agreement. This one is required by the local board of realtors before viewing any homes in person, and it commits me to you and you to me unless you choose to terminate this agreement otherwise. Please sign. That's it.
So tell everybody what your closing rate is on, what was it, 99% or?
99.7% of the buyers I met with chose to sign an exclusive agency agreement and work with me. Again, I am not any more special than anyone in this room. I can just assure you I practiced it more than you. I practiced it over and over until I couldn't get it wrong. I used to give my team leader permission to just come walk into my office and go, why do I have to get pre-approved before you show me homes? And I would have to hurry up and just answer his objection. Practice. This is not rocket science. Okay, and I learned these language patterns. None of this is original. I'm a repeat. I'm a phony. I just practiced and practiced and practiced and practiced. You can do this too. Okay, and there's a difference between being cocky and confident. I'm confident in the value I bring to the transaction. Okay, I wasn't quite as confident my first maybe few years, but now I am. If I ever stop being team leader and go back into production, this is what I'm gonna do.
I'm gonna refer you all my business.
You're
You're very good.
But again, does it take talent to do this well? Shake your head no. Just takes practice.
Can I share something with everybody? So I attended this same presentation back in November, and I basically told myself if there's one thing that I'm gonna do in 2025, I wanna get to her level on that presentation.
Yeah.
So things don't always progress as fast as we like, but I do have the Canva download that she's gonna send, and I've looked at it. Basically, for me, that's a talking point. Like, it's just a cue for me to talk about this. And I was asking Jordan how many times, two, three times, maybe I'm like, hey, I want this recorded, and here we're finally getting it recorded. And I think, in my opinion, it's because the job that she does presenting the material, like, if you just watch the video, you're gonna pick up something different every time. So I've done this one time, 2 weeks ago, with some people that I already knew as a doctor. So a good, good price point. First time home buyers, they loved it. I mean, they even thanked me. Well, then fast forward to a week ago on Friday, I got a Zillow lead. So somebody I'd never met, spoken to before. We had a good conversation for 10 minutes. They had a house they wanted to sell. They were thinking about buying because they're tired of the traffic. All right, cool. But it sounded like she wanted to wait through the weekend to possibly go with her husband to see the property she had called about. Next thing I know, she's calling me the next morning, an hour and 45 minutes before she wants to see it. Well, what do? Instead of the day before setting the appointment for this, now I'm in a position where, okay, this is a really good lead. I need to go meet them. I'm going to set the appointment, go meet them, and build on that rapport. And I have to get a buyer's rep signed now. Well, they didn't sign the buyer's rep. We didn't see the house. We're no longer talking. If I had just, asked them the day before, hey, do you have an hour on Saturday we can meet and go over this? I'd probably have a different situation where I would have a potential listing and a potential buyer. But instead, I'm like, well, let's move that to nurture because they're not going to contact me again.
Oh, Rob, I hate that for you. But thank you for being vulnerable and sharing that.
I told my wife last night, I said, my Zillow tracks everything. It's ridiculous. It's crazy.